Hello folks, welcome back. Now we'll see how we can perform remaining all other CRUD operations. For example, read, that is find by ID, find all, kind of other remaining all operations. So let us open the previous project which we are developing. Here in this repository, we have defined a sub-interface of JpaRepository where we got all the operations automatically. We did not define any separate specific method for each of the CRUD operation. In order to understand that, please let me see here. In this class, student repo is the repository, that is sub-interface of JpaRepository. Just keep the mouse pointer here. You'll get to know from where you got this. This is from this package. Fine, that is clear. Now, here, what all other methods we are getting from this student repo? Let us observe student repo dot finish. These all methods count. How many records are there? Then delete a specific record, delete all records, delete all by some criteria, delete all by ID, not only delete. See, find all in the similar way, find by ID, like so many operations, not so many, all CRUD operations you can perform with the help of this simple repo. That is the advantage of SpringDataJPA with CRUD repository or JpaRepository. Actually, this CRUD repository is a sub-interface of JpaRepository. Now, in our project, we are using this JpaRepository. Now, let us try to perform different other operations here in student service. As of now, we have only single operation, that is save a single student. Now, along with save, find a single student. Find student. This is one method. Find all students. This is another method. Then edit student. Then delete student. These are all the methods we are going to define. First, we'll comment out all these lines and start with find a single student. How you can find a single student? By using the ID, unique ID of that particular student. So access is public, the student is the found, retrieved student object. We want to retrieve by the ID, that is int. Okay, now student repo dot find by ID. Here if you observe find by ID, ID you are passing. Now, what is the return type of this find by ID? Surprisingly, this is not a student. Let us observe what is the return type. The return type is not a student, it is optional of student. What is this? Optional of student. So, what is the impact? What is the purpose of optional of student instead of a straight student? The purpose is, in some scenarios, the return type can be null when there is no student existing with that ID. So, based on the return value, if we are performing some other operation in some other different layer, there we need to check null. Instead of performing null checking there, here itself, it is returning optional object. Now, in that optional object, student may exist or may not exist based on the availability of that student object in the database table. If the database table have a record with this particular ID, the database table will return a result, a record that comes into the optional of object. If there is no record, optional object is empty. Now, let us avail that optional of student. Optional of student. Now, OPT student equals to. This is clear. Now, what should be the return type? Return type is some student, right? That just a placeholder. That null is simply a placeholder. Now, we need to check whether there is a student with this ID or not. How we can do that? If optional of student dot is present method is there. This is present returns true if there is a student object existing in optional of student. If there is no student, simply it returns a false. That's all. Now let us observe. If present, what to do? return opt student dot get. The get method returns the student object. Up to here it is clear. Then else what to do? Else what to do? Here shall we return null object? In that case, what is the very purpose of optional of student? There is no use. So what to do here? Here let us create an exception, custom exception, business specific exception, and then we'll throw that exception. What is that exception? Maybe invalid student ID exception. That is fine enough. So let us try to define that kind of exception here. New class. This class is from com.tutorial.exception package, and the exception class name is invalid student ID exception. And what should be the superclass of that exception? Since we want to have a checked exception, our exception class should be subclass of java.lang.exception. And then here, if we don't want to do anything manually, if you want to depend on everything developed by Eclipse, what we can do here? Simply constructor from superclass, this checkbox you enable, click on finish button. Now you got invalid student ID exception, which is extending the exception superclass. These are all the constructors. It is more than sufficient for our scenario. Now what to do? In else class, in else case, simply invalid student ID exception equals to new invalid student ID exception based on a string, the message based on which we want to have the exception to be created. Now, what is the message? In student ID is not a valid value. What is the ID you have passed? That ID. Okay. E, you got E, that is exception object. Now let us throw that E. Finished. Is this sufficient? No, it is showing error message, error marker here. What is this error marker represents to? Since this method is throwing exception which we are not catching within the same method, it is showing error. So what suggestions it is giving? Either you can use try catch blocks or you can use throws declaration. Since this is the top, this is not the topmost layer, it is not recommended to use try catch. Instead, let us use the throws declaration. The caller of this method is supposed to use appropriate try catch blocks to catch this particular exception. Now, in this way, we got the find a single student by the ID. Now, find all students. This is very straightforward method. Public list of, that is java.util.list of student. Find all students. Here, what to do? The repository you have student repo dot find all. The find all method is returning list of students. The returned list of students straight away you return from here. There ends the picture. Now, edit a single student. So, what is the editing single student? What is the argument? What is the return type? Let us try to observe. Public is access. Return type will be obviously single student. Then argument is student which you want to edit. Now here in this edit student we have a tricky activity. Let us observe. The student repo don't have any edit or update kind of a method. You observe here in alphabetical order, you can see there is no edit nor update kind of a method. Simply only save method you have. So how we are going to use that save method? But how? What is the impact of the save method? We need to understand here. Right. The save method. The argument student object is going to have all member data: ID, name, email, and whatever all the member data it is going to have. Now, that student object you are going to pass to save method. Now, what is its behavior? If there is a student object existing in the table with the ID in this student object. If existing, then that is going to edit. If it is not existing, that object is going to be saved in the database table. But our intention is to only modify when it is existing. If not existing, what to do? What we did during the find student by ID, we have thrown simply an exception. The same thing we'll do here again. So what to do? Let us try. Here first we need to find if there is a student existing with this student ID or not. So student repo dot find by ID. Otherwise, the current class find the student by the ID, student dot get ID. Finish. That's all. If there is a student existing, there is a record existing in the table with the ID we passed here, it is not going to throw any exception. Control goes to the next line. But if there is no student existing, simply it throws exception. That exception we have to re-throw from here. Throws. Instead of manually we are typing the code, just we ask Eclipse what to do. See, it is showing two suggestions, either throws declaration or try catch. What is the recommended? Already we discussed what is the recommendation here. Since this is not the topmost layer, it is highly recommended to use throws declaration. Finished throws declaration. Now, let us go to the next step. Here, if there is a student existing in the table with the given ID, exception is not thrown, control comes to the 39th line. But in the contrast, if there is no student existing, exception thrown. Right. Now, since we are in 39th line, there is a student object existing. Now what to do? Simply, you have to save the object to the repository. Student repo dot save. So, save what to save? Student object we want to save. Done. After saving, the save method, already we saw save method returns the saved object. Now, the same saved object let us return from here. This is about the edit a single student object. Now, delete student. How to perform delete student and what should be the return type of the student? Public is the access. Here again, this is another tricky area. What we should return, whether Boolean means upon successful deletion of the student, let us return true, otherwise false. Is this a good approach? No, not very good. Instead of returning simply Boolean, let us return the deleted student object, so that in the front-end layer, if the front-end designer wanted to access the deleted student object and perform some kind of presentation there, that will be helpful. So instead of returning simply Boolean, let us return student object which has been deleted. So single student I want to delete by the ID. Now, again, first we need to check whether there is a student existing with a given ID or not. If existing, let us delete. So how did we check that same operation in the previous method during the edit? The same thing we'll do. Find student by the ID. Now, in the earlier scenario, we don't want to have the return value for any other purposes during the edit. But now here, since we want to return the deleted student, we have to take the found student into a local member variable, and then let us delete student repo dot delete by ID and pass the ID. Deleted successfully. Now let us return the student which we found in the previous line. But 42nd line is showing some error. What is that error? Find student by ID throws an error. Not error, that is an exception. So we have to use either try catch block or we have to declare with throws. So throws. Invalid student ID exception we have to throw from here. This is about the service. And now, once all of the methods of service were completed, let us try to perform these operations from the application. right? As of now, I have only single student object, but with single student object, we cannot perform many operations. So let us insert few more operations. Here, one student is Kishore. Let us create here couple of student objects. Student 1 equals to new student of name email Rajesh, and email ID is rajesh@gmail.com, and student 2 is new student of again John at msn.com. Now another student 3 is again another new student of Paul at hotmail.com. Now I have 3 student objects. Let us save these students one after another into the student service. So student service dot save student 1 and student service dot save student 2, and then the same line once again with the student 3. Finished. All students were saved, but can we execute this program as it is? No. The reason is here in spring.xml, one very important property, hibernate.hbm to ddl auto automatically HBM all Hibernate mappings to be converted to DDL, means automatically tables are created. That is the configuration. Now I don't want the tables to be dropped and created. I want to continue with the existing tables. So what I have to do, instead of create, let us use update. So what is the impact of this update? If tables are existing, it will insert into the existing tables. If tables are not existing, it will create new tables. That is the impact of this HBM to DDL auto update or create. Right. Here student service is showing some error message. That is fixed now. We'll go to the application and then let us run the application. We'll observe what will happen. Run as a Java application. Now you observe insert, one insert, second insert, third insert. So many records were inserted. We'll go to the database table and observe what all operations were, what all records were inserted there. MySQL -u root -p root, and the database name is tutorial. Here select star from student table. Here, what is the table name? Yes, uppercase, I think. Let us check it out. Right, Rajesh, John, Paul, just now inserted. Now let us try to perform one after another operation from which so far we defined. Let us comment out everything from the previous code, and then student service based on the from the student service. Let us try to perform find find a single student by the ID. So student equals to student service dot find a student by ID. Let us try to find a student by ID 3. So immediately this line is throwing some error message. What is this error? Find a student method throws exception. What is that exception? The student with the given ID may or may not existing, so that invalid student ID exception it throws. So we need to use what we need to choose here out of the given suggestions. Shall we choose add throws declaration? No, not at all, because this is the topmost layer. Since this is the topmost layer, we have to choose the try catch. Otherwise, if it is any layer other than the topmost layer, we have to choose throws declaration. Now sys out found student, otherwise found plus the found student object. Let us execute the program. See here, the found student is with ID 3 John at msn.com. Now let us try to find a student which is not existing there. Let us say 111. Definitely that student object is not existing, so it throws exception. Control reach to this catch block. What is that? app.java 30th line. So from this line exception thrown. So up to this line, from where the exception has thrown up to here. From student service.java 29th line. What is there in the 29th line? Exception object creation was there in 29th line. So from 29th line of student service, the exception thrown back to app.java. So this is the way we can find a single student by the ID. Now we perform one more operation, that is edit student. So let us create a student object. Student equals to new student of ID 103, but 103 student name and email ID I want to change. Okay, so Thomas is the student name and Thomas@iCloud.com. Before I am executing my command, once we'll go back to the database table and verify what is the name of the student with ID 103. See here, select the star from student. What is not 103? Sorry, actually it is 3. Right. What is the student with ID 3? John, which I want to change as Thomas. Let us see. Student service dot edit student of student. It is returning the saved student, but I don't want to save that. There is no business with the saved student, so that I am not taking the return value. As simple as that. Now, the student may exist or may not exist with the given ID, so that it throws exception. Now, in this context, we have to choose try catch instead of throws. Already we discussed, we are at the topmost layer in the application. So, try catch. So, let us sys out saved, updated successfully. Okay, now let us execute the program. Right, updated successfully. Go back to database table and the select command Thomas. Now the ID 3 name is Thomas. Now let us try with an ID which is not existing there. 333 is not existing, so it throws exception. There is no point of displaying updated successfully message. This control will not reach to 42nd line to display updated successfully. Control jump to exception. Okay, so this is the way how we can edit it. In a similar way, you try out with the delete operation. Thank you for watching.